Next one I want to touch on is instance promotion. And so I posted a blog. We have the link in here. We'll go ahead and open that up to show that to you. But while that loads, want to go over a few things. So instance promotion, and this would mean going from dev, test, prod. The connections, connection settings, entitlements, authorized users, these are all things that are instance specific. So if you were moving your configuration from a dev instance to a test instance to a prod instance, the connections, because it's creating an RPS connection, it's creating a OAuth authentication, those are instance specific. So those will never be moved between instances. If you perform your configuration, as a provider, you perform your configuration of remote tasks and definitions and remote record providers and so on, that information will be able to be moved in traditional update set manners. But the connection itself is not going to be. So you would configure in a dev instance, you move over all of your information, the provider record, remote task definitions, if you have any transforms, any remote choices, and so on, you perform all of that configuration, move that over, and then you will then want to reestablish a connection to presumably, the dev instance on consumer, and then also, test instance on the consumer, and then you will do the same thing to establish the connection to a production instance. So the content itself will be moved over, but the connections are unique because that is a direct instance-to-instance configuration, or specific instance configuration, we'll say. One last thing as well is that remote record producers on the consumer instance, today they do not maintain the same sysid. So a remote task definition does. Remote record producers, even if you're migrating your configuration on the provider side, when they get published over to the consumer side, they will be different sysids. So if there is customization that a consumer is doing, targeting a specific RRP on the consumer instance, and they have a sysid, they are going to need to update that script or flow or whatever it might be on their instances between dev, test, and prod. So that will be being updated in the August release, so that it will maintain same sysids between the instances for the RRPs. But just be aware that today that is not something that is maintained, and it will have different sysids. So this is the instance or the blog that we have that posted, and so breaks it down between provider and consumer instance, goes over each of the different components, as we say, connections, connection settings, authorized users are not. The provider record, something you can capture. Remote record producers can be captured. Remote task definitions, consumer conditions as well, consumer criteria, and we'll go into some of the detail as well. Some of these things should be migrated in the same update set or prior to the update set. So as an example, consumer criteria. Consumer criteria is used in remote task definitions and is used in remote record providers. So if you move over a remote record provider that is using a consumer condition, you want to make sure that the consumer condition is actually there in the instance. Otherwise, when you go to move over that remote record provider or remote task definition, the reference to that consumer condition is going to be missing. Same thing with things like transforms. There's relationships to the particular objects that they're being used in, remote choices, some of those things. So you will have those dependencies, similar to many other things within ServiceNow. If you have those relationships, you want to make sure that the object it's relating to is going to be there already, or is moved over within the same update set. In consumer instances, you will see it's a little bit different. Remote record producers, remote task definitions, not something that should be migrated over, because it's going to be pushed out from the producer, from the provider, over into the consumer instance. Now, if you have things that are doing, if you have additional scripts or additional configuration that is done and linking to those remote record producers or remote task definitions, those can be captured and be moved over. However, it's just something, it's you want to apply any customizations after the fact for remote task definitions. And then for remote record producers, keep in mind the SysID is going to be different. So there is going to have to be some additional work that'll have to be done at least until the August release, when they will then maintain the same SysIDs. So similarly, probably a lot to consume at the moment. There's this article to refer to. Let us know if you have any questions. Also, we have essentially this icon of showing what are the elements that should not be captured with an update set based off of that data model. So we have the entitlements, we have the settings, the provider tasks themselves should be moved over, authorized user, and then the connection and the registration task. Those are things that should not be captured with an update set, since those are items that are unique with the pairing between individual instances.